Hi, this is Behzad. I'm a specialist in process design and developing ProcessMaker BPMS. I've worked with both version 3 and 4 of this super practical software and developed various plugins for them. I definitely recommend using this software, ideally the enterprise version. But if that's not an option, the community edition still does a great job. It really helps your organization with systematizing operations and implementing processes, improving your process cycles and cutting down unnecessary costs. In this video, I'm gonna show you a handy plugin I built for ProcessMaker 4. One of the key things you'll need in a BPMS is the ability to connect it with your other business software. One of the best ways to handle this is through APIs, and you can use the API integration plugin for that. But sometimes you might run into situations where the tool you need to connect doesn't offer any web services or charges a high fee for access. In those cases, one solution is to connect directly to the database using defined access permissions, so we can read from or write it based on your setup. I've designed a tool called the Database Connection and Query Execution plugin. When you import and activate this plugin, a menu called Query Connector will appear in the Designer section. If the user has the necessary access, they can perform the operation through this menu. Connect a database, whether internal or external. We need to define the connection in this section first. As you can see, I've connected both to an internal server and external. And here you can define your own connections. Right now we support 3 types of connections: MySQL, SQLite, and SQL Server. Depending on the type, you just need to fill in the related setting and fields and input the necessary data. Once you have entered the data and hit save, you can test the connection right there to make sure everything's set up properly. If it works, the connection is ready to use. So that first step before working inside your process design or form builder is to come here and define your database connections and test them. Once that's done, you can use those connections in your processes and workflows. For example, inside a query task or directly within your forms, like in a voucher or fields that depend on dynamic data, such as drop-downs, checkboxes, or radio buttons. I'll show more on that. So first, I've created a sample process. In this case, it's leave request workflow. I want to show you how to use a query task inside this process. The overall logic of the leave request is like this. First, the employee submits a request, then a notification is sent to the related manager. The manager can either send it back for revision, reject it, or approve it. After that, it goes to the HR officer, who can generate the final output and notify the employee with the result. But in our case, before sending that final notification, we want the leave data to be saved into our separate HR software. So we have added a query task at that stage. When I click the plus button to add a new element, you will see that there is a component called query task or run query. And I can simply drag and drop it into the process and start configuring it. When I place the query task in the middle of the workflow and click on it, you will see I've given it a name and first choose the connection I want from the ones we already defined. Then I set up the query. In my example here, I've written an update query. It updates a table and sets the number of leave days based on the value received from the process. It also uses the user ID that the process passes into target the correct record. It's really that simple. No need to write complex scripts, no need to deal with a script task or define sensitive keywords. You just use this feature directly. In my case, I use an update query, but you can also run select, insert, or delete queries within the workflow. Of course, for update, insert or delete, you usually don't expect a return value, but for select, if you need the result back, you can simply assign it to a variable, like a variable named result, for example, and then use that data inside your query. So as you saw, using query task inside your workflows is super straightforward and powerful. Alright, and now let's take a look at how this feature works. I've created a sample form called query test. Inside it, I added a loop section, and inside that loop, I placed two drop-downs side by side. Outside the loop, there is also a simple drop-down for group and another for users. The same fields also exist inside the loop are used there too. But what makes these drop-downs different from regular ones in the form builder is that they're not using static options. They're using data coming directly from database query. I use the query list field instead of the usual select list. Let's click on one of these query list elements. I've given it a variable name and a label. Then in the setting, I choose database connections. For example, I told it to get a list of groups from the groups table in our internal database. I also selected how the data should be returned, either as a single value or as an object. I specified the label field for display in the dropdown. You can also enable multi-select if you need, and if you expect a large result set, you can set a limit to make sure performance stays smooth. And that's basically how the setup works. Now let's look at the users dropdown. It works the same way. I gave it a variable name and label. In the setting, I wrote a new query that pulls data from users table with a few conditions I needed. At the end of the query, I added a condition to check if ID matches the ID coming from the group field in the form. So it dynamically filters based on the group selected earlier. As you can see, it was super easy to set up dependent field. Now the users are filtered by the group I pick. Let's check a few more settings. I saved the value as an object, and here I've also enabled the multiple selection option. I've added the same two drop-downs inside the loop as well, with the exact same setting, so everyone works the same way there too. Let's go ahead and preview the form. When I click on the group field, you'll see the data loads really fast from the database. Right now there is no user showing because I haven't picked, so let's choose I'll select staff group, and you can see that the related usernames appear right away. Every name I click and get selected. It's working as a multi-select drop down here. Here we can see the requests group. In this group, one of the users has been removed. I can add another user, remove them or change. For example, the managers group, the users are filtered based on the selected group. The same behavior works inside the loop too. So if I click on the plus button, you'll notice I can easily use the same features inside the loop as well. You can see that the data is saved correctly. Each one is stored as an object with the fields was selected in the query. For the groups, I've selected to run and return the ID name and description. For the users, I've selected fields like ID, name and last name, and just the fields I needed. And now let's go back and set a limit. I'll open the group drop down setting and set a limit. Let's say 2 and go to preview. As you can see, it only loads 2 records. If I search for staff, it shows me and let me select it. If I search again and try to remove a selected one, it works just fine. This limit helps improve speed and performance, especially when dealing with large data sets. So overall, and this tool is really useful. Besides using API task, now you can directly connect to your databases, even in cases where web services aren't available or cost too much, and you can rest assured that plugin handles your database interactions and safely inside the platform. I recommend you try this plugin. It will definitely boost the flexibility and capability of your processes.